Okay, your own material, a bit more tips to do that in Revit. We talked about again this last class. The most important thing is always to search for where you change the material you want. And for floors, it's quite straightforward. It's an issue of layers. For ceilings, it's an issue of layers. For roof, it's an issue of layers. For walls, it's an issue of layers. So you go to the edit manager, and then you go to the structure and change the materiality of whatever layer. I always recommend, obviously, to duplicate that type. Um, you know, if it comes to windows, for example, you want to select a window and search for the materials of the frame. You don't like that frame in your project. It's almost for every single element, doors, windows, and so on. So it's an issue of going into the edit type and searching for all of these parameters that you have here. Before you change any material in a door, in a window, even if you're only changing the material, you should duplicate, because it's automatically, you're changing the standard generated automatically by Revit, and you're declaring a new type. So I would always recommend to say duplicate, and you can even keep it the size if the size doesn't change, and then say, I don't know, whatever it is, wood, cherry, whatever it is. And then you have to look at the options here. Here you have a glass panel material. So that's where you know where you can change the glass panel. Many of you are probably thinking, well, I have a nice window, but I want the glass to be in red. So here's where you will come in. You go and click at the 3 points there. And instead of the glass, you can search for your own glass, or you can create your own new material, rename it as red glass, and then bring from the library the one you want by double clicking, as we have done in the past. So that will be for the glass shells material. That's the other thing that you can change. You click there, and instead of the shells, you can actually search for cherry and select that one. And then automatically will change the shells material of the window. No? Other parameters can be changed here, which is the height, width, etc., etc. But again, duplicate anytime you're rethinking these basic dimensions and parameters from Revit. Okay, I'm going to cancel that. The same goes for doors, obviously. Edit type, let's search for it. You have here panel material, frame material, trim material, door handle material, and the sizes. Remember always again to duplicate before you change anything. We will talk about curtain walls right after, but it will be similar, as in selecting elements and search for where the material aspects appear here. Okay. I think we talked about every other element, and that's fine. So how do we create? I'm going to remind you of how do we create our own material again. I'm going to actually edit this wall, and I'm going to bring that layer we created, that material here I call Funk Matte. I'm going to bring it back to Gypsum board, which is what it was before the change. Okay, there we go. So let's just imagine I'm editing and I'm going to place a new material to this particular wall again. So I'm going to edit type, first of all, duplicate. I'm going to call it the same, but I'm going to say something like stone wall. Okay, I'm going to edit. And I know that the finished material here is going to be a different material. So I'm going to click there. I can search for stone. And there's concrete, blah, blah, but I don't have a stone. I want like a masonry type of material. So I need to create my own material. I'm going to say new material. I'm going to right click, rename, and I'm going to call it stone material. Okay, I'm going to say okay. So at least that is there, even though I haven't changed the material. I can assign it already to a layer. Most probably the stone material is not going to be 5/8 of an inch. So I'm going to change that obviously to significantly bigger, like maybe 5 inches. And that wall has already custom material there assigned, but I haven't made the material itself. So that's something we have to do under the material manager, which, as you know, it's under manage materials. And again, I wanted to search for my stone material, and here's where I'm going to start editing that material. Remember graphics, and I think I've repeated this several times. This is about how we see the model in Revit in different ways, under shading or hidden lines or consistent colors, the three options you can find here, and appearance about how you render it. Okay, so they might be conflictingly different or not. That's up to you. You can add patterns, whatever, but then if you want to make it render here that is following a particular materiality and reflectivity and so on, that's, this is under appearance where you have to do it. Stone. Well, like any other material that you're bringing out from out there, you might have taken a photo, whatever it is, you basically need to go to Google. No? Oh, I mean, I'm saying Google, you can go to any other image search engine. I'm going to say stone pattern, maybe. And again, as you know, many of these image search engines, you can search in many ways. I think you probably know better of how to do this. I think the word pattern makes sense. You have to try to get an image that is actually a two-dimensional photography or a perpendicular photography of the material, and you have to imagine that material expanding X, Y, and Z. And the more irregularities that you find in that material, the more difficult it will expand in a easy way. For example, this stone here has a lot of bright and yellow elements here and very slightly darker there. If I imagine this one duplicated, I would imagine there's going to be like a pattern that is very obvious, and it's something we want to avoid. No, I'm going to use that one because I think it's a good example for a wrongdoing and how we can solve that wrongdoing. I'm going to right-click Save As. You want to make sure it's a JPEG. That's actually a good way to go about it. And stone pattern. There it goes. Go back. Material editor. We go to the material I created, stone material, appearance, and then, as you know by now, you can click on the little box on the image to search for an image. No? Stone pattern, open. It appears there. It will change the preview because it's updating now. And if you don't want a super realistic rendering, sometimes this is enough. You say, okay. And there it goes. I'm under realistic, that's why I can see it. But if I go to hidden line, it's with the pattern that we have established in the material shading option. Okay, I think needless to say that this has to be a bigger scale. The stone is very big, very small. So what we can do is go back to the material editor, stone material, appearance, and then go here and edit the image. The size of the image can be changed, should be changed. And we can rotate it if you want to go in a particular angle. You can also change the scale to be constrained or not constrained. And again, you can just set here whatever dimension. Okay, done. Okay. I could apply as well. I think now it's too big. So I'm going to take it down a notch. Same steps, maybe 7 and 4. You can tile this, how it repeats, basically. You can say that the tile, whether it's tile or not, sorry, is it one image or not, but this should be, oh, you can change brightness here as well. The position, I changed it by accident, which is 0. There you go. You can rotate it if you say 90 degrees, and that will be rotated if that's something you're looking at. And apply. You don't have to step out of the material editor. You can keep it in another window or move it around so you can edit and then check. I think the size, let's just imagine that the scale of the stone is good, but still remains a big problem. And this is where I said before, like, notice how these brighter areas up here are almost like repeated, and it creates this pattern that is too obvious. It's normally something that when you see a render and you see that, this is first timer doesn't know how to solve it. You can solve this after rendering and going to Photoshop and fixing it. But you could also do a little bit of work in Photoshop before you actually bring the image. So let's do that for a second. If you go to Photoshop and we open the image, stone pattern. This is the image that I get. Notice that it's a great resolution. So that's going to give me a nice texture afterwards when I fix the texture issue, the bump. I'm going to save as Control-Shift-S, and I'm going to call it something like repeated or rep. You could do this or not, it's more up to you. But the way you can do this is actually change the canvas size and make it expand only in one direction, double. So if it's 54, you can say around 140, you can say 80 approximately. Look what happens. I just basically expanded the canvas on, Now I can, with the selection tool, I can select only the stone, Control-C, Control-V, as in victory, and I'm going to move it out here. Okay, this one, I'm going to right-click while I'm in the selection tool, right-click, and there's an option which is basically free transform, and you know how to do that is Control-T as well, and I'm going to right-click, flip horizontally. I don't know if any of you are seeing what I'm trying to do here. I actually copy the same image and place it side by side with the previous and make them kiss in a perfect point, which is where they begin and end is the same thing. So that pattern is going to be continuous. Also, I have to say that the end will be the same as the end here. So the pattern will be also continuous in that sense. But let me actually, for example, continue that. I can also Control-X, Control-X, Control-V. So I have these ones, Control-T. I can change that. Bring this one here, Control-T to scale that and snap there. And then I can Control-V again, Control-T, place it here, right-click, flip vertically, and scale. Control-V, Control-T, right-click, flip horizontally and vertically. And move it to that corner. Control-T. So this is the essence of what you can do to improve it. It's not going to be 100% better if you only do this, but understand the logic of patterns. I started with an image and I copied 4 times and I flipped them so the parts where they meet are going to be exactly matching. Not only that, the parts where they don't meet here, when you repeat this new image next to itself, it's going to be exactly the same. So that's almost like a perfect match, no matter how you sell it. Now, it's just there's a little bit like a center point there that we need to fix, but that's relatively easy if we just shift it a little bit forward, a little bit up here, a little bit forward and up. And what we do is use, for example, the eraser tool. Small, this option, soft round. And now you start erasing from each layer. I think I'm erasing 50%. So in a way, I'm kind of inventing a new pattern right there. Maybe those are too similar. This layer, I come and bring it up. And here. Okay. Still to focus on the center, no? But at least it will give me a little more possibilities. Now I need to crop this C shortcut, crop it so I obviously don't have any black surrounding. And that's the new image that we can do. Potentially the top and the bottom will meet exactly, and right and left will meet. So I can save this. Maybe from the layers, I need to, like flatten, so you can actually flatten the image. So you only have one and it's actually a lot, and you can save it, and it's the new stone pattern repetition. No? We go back to the materials in Revit, stone material, appearance. Oops. Edit image, and we just need to change the image altogether. So unfortunately, the only way to do this is by remove the image and assign the new one, which is the one with rep. If I apply, it goes back to the same pattern as before, the number, so we need to change that size, which is, we mentioned scale. Now it can be bigger because it's actually double. Let's say 8. Oh. So, okay, notice what's happening here. It has like a very strong line, and that's probably because in Photoshop, I left some black kind of a background. So that's relatively easy to fix. You go to the C and you basically crop a little bit inwards. See, there is. It's actually this line. It was in the preview, so. Oops. See, get rid of that black line. And this line here. Save. Save this one here as well. That looks good. So here should be now fixed slightly. That kind of a black line that I left there. Mm-hmm. There it is. Okay, you still see, notice now you have a little different pattern, which is this movement. But that would be much better. You can always just change a little bit the scale in one direction. For example, under appearance, edit image. I will probably make it a little bigger, something like 15 feet. And 10. Okay, you do see a little bit of the pattern, but compared to the previous model, this is actually much more convincing. No? Then with shadows and reflections and so on, you could actually make it look quite nice. In that regard, you can always go to appearance, and this is another element, especially for very highly textured materials. It is important to add a bump, and normally bump is best when it's a black and white image, but you have to choose the same image and make sure that the pattern that follows it's precisely the same. No? So I think we mentioned 15 and 10. 15, 10, let me go back to 0 here. 0, 0, 15, 10. Okay, and then here you can do the same. Okay, so what this bump is we're going to do is actually push the dark colors in, and then the lighters are going to be pushing out. So let me try to get a rendering that could show this. So I'm going to do again very fast another one, just to go very fast on it, and for the wall, for the floor. In this case, we can edit type and take a look at what floor we have. So I'm going to duplicate and say wood floor, and then go to edit, add a new layer that's going to be all the way in the top as finished material, and it's going to be a type of wood that we don't have here. Let's say you're super picky about a particular wood. Let's say redwoods. And I'm going to give it a thickness of a couple of inches. Okay, so that will be the new floor here on the bottom, but we haven't assigned a material. No? So as always, we go to manage materials. And our new redwood pattern. Again, you could always search within the asset browser for any type of wood. You have a lot of wood, so you can, I recommend you, before you start creating your own materials, that you search here for the ones that you might already have. But oftentimes you're, and that's pretty much what you should be, is like, be critical of what material you want to use, and you need to create your own through research and kind of a searching on the web. No? So I'm going to say red wood pattern. Again, pattern, the word is a good one because it tends to give you this type of effects. No? And I'm looking at floors, so maybe something, these are wonderful, but think about it, how it will actually, continue a pattern repetition. So normally the best ones are those that have lines to work with, and the bigger the scale, the better. For example, if you take this image, you will have that little knot repeating in every single pattern. No? So let's imagine this one. I like it. So save as. It's a JPEG redwood. Go back here on the redwood pattern, appearance, and as always, image. Redwood. That's gonna nicely repeat. There he goes. And the pattern is definitely too small. Edit the image. And most probably you want to make it like in one direction bigger. Let's say 5 feet. And let's say 8 feet. Apply, see how it looks. And there you go, the pattern, how it's looking, not perfect as in a repetition. Let's fix first how the image repeats. And again, you have the problem of one image after the other one. So that's when I recommend going to Photoshop and opening the redwood pattern. And that's because the bottom area again is darker than the top. So we need to change the canvas size, make it double of whatever it is. So this is 1.5, we could say 3. It's 1.2, you can just say 3 as well. And then you could just scale it. M for selecting, Control X, Control V, V to move it, put it in the corner, right click, under selection, duplicate layer, for example, and place it to the side, no? Control T, you can start scaling these things. Control T, snap. Listen here, but I also Control T and flip horizontally, no? So that would be a perfect continuity. It should match them perfectly, and I could even put the first, wooden slab like on top of each other. Then I could also just flatten these guys, so I can say flatten images, and then M, and just select both of these guys. Control C, Control V, bring it down. Control T, right click, flip vertically. And that's when dark and dark meet. And then we can make sure that that repeats nicely. Now it's going to have that pattern in the middle, so I can move this one further up and use the eraser with, again, soft round to eliminate that kind of edge. You can even take it further up and say eliminate this part, this part, this part a little bit. I'm going to flatten this guy. And now you could also use the clone tool, which is the S command, which is another brush that allows you to copy things. So if you press Alt into one point, click the left button of the mouse, and then you can draw with that same, whatever it was in the first click, you can actually take it to another part of the image. So let me see if you can see that. As I click here with pressing Alt, and I basically copy whatever's here, and I paint with that copy in this area. These two are repeated, so maybe I can do that as well. As take something from here or from here. Okay, I'm gonna crop it. Save it. Well, just have save it as, and I call it something like rep. JPEG. Can go back here, go to material editor, with pattern, appearance, and again here, eliminating the image to add the new one. It's going to be too small now. So I can edit the image, and I think it was something like 8 and whatever, but I can make it bigger because now it's much bigger. So I can say 15 feet and let's say 10 feet. Apply. And that looks much better. Maybe a little bit smaller. Something like 12 and 8. Apply. Nice. Okay, so what a wood normally has some kind of reflection, so you can add reflectivity as well. Obviously, it's not too much, depending on the glossiness of the resin that you might have applied to that, but still has some. And it also has a little bit of bump, no? So you can assign the same image exactly, but maybe it's not as much intense of a texture. And I think it was 12 and 8. But here will be much smaller amount, something like 5. Another thing that when you're doing a rendering is nice to do is just to make sure that your, the shadows are coming in a nice place. So in this case, I would like the sun maybe to bath this particular wall. So I recommend that you go to your sun settings and you change a little bit the time or whatever it is. No? So maybe you want to change that and see how we can get the sun coming in nicely in the morning and bathing whatever you want to present this as a nice rendering quality. Okay, so that's the thing. And this is draft, so the final will be considerably different. And now we should have some reflectivity, some bump in the floor, also bump in the stone, a little reflectivity as well, and a much better solution for the rendering. Maybe it's too much reflectivity. So that would be something to subtract. Now it's also about resolution. And that probably is going to be much better when you render in high quality. A couple things you can do also, because those exteriors in Revit are horrible. You can either change the sky for an image. That's something you can do. But sometimes it's just good to go to the exterior of your building and place a tree or a couple of trees. So you can go to component, and I'm not sure if I have trees here, but yeah, there you go. So you can choose like a nice big tree, place it where you think the camera is going to see it. Maybe even why not? Copy it and put one behind, and then another one could be all the way in the front. This one could be a different type of tree. And you can kind of take a look at how those will impact. So this tree is coming in, so you want to drag a little bit out. This one could be shifted much backwards, so it feels like there's a depth to this. And move this around. I think also people give a very interesting kind of sense of scale, and also dress nicely the rendering. So as you know, you can add people. If you don't have them here, you can load family to entourage, which would be entourage here. You can select the female or male, and then there are different types within those options. This will be, the good thing about placing them in Revit is that they will be reflected in the floor, etc., etc. And you can also copy the person, bring them outside, and change the person here, Tina, and maybe potentially bring in somebody very far away. Oops, I don't know what that'll go. Okay, so these things tend to dress nicely the renderings, of course. And obviously furniture, which is what comes right after. The good thing about the trees, if they're well placed, is they're going to create the shadows coming in through the glass in a very nice way as well. And again, all of this is draft view, but if you do it in your final view, it should look much nicer.